Welcome to the Liberty Reports training series. In today's video, we will be discussing the DBMax function included with the Liberty Reports software. The DBMax function for Liberty Reports returns the largest value from a column in a table. The rows that are compared can be limited by applying a filter. In our example today, we will be starting with a driving query that pulls a list of AP vendors. We'll then add a DBMax function for each row to provide the oldest AP invoice due date for each vendor. The easiest way to use one of the Liberty Reports functions is to select the cell in which you wish the returned value to be displayed, then select the Function Wizard button located in the Liberty Reports ribbon. Doing so brings up a list of our most commonly used Liberty Reports functions. If we select a specific function, like DBMax, we are then presented with a description of the purpose of the function as well as the proper syntax of how the formula will appear upon completion of the wizard. Once we have selected the DBMax function, we can click Next. We're then presented with a list of the available database tables for our existing connection. In this example, we're connecting to a Sage 100 contractor database, and since we are wanting to find the oldest invoice due date for each vendor, we will select AP Invoice and click Next. We're then presented with a list of columns for the AP Invoice table. We'll select Due Date and click Next. We're then prompted to create conditions that we can use to filter our results based on the information provided by the query. We'll click Add Condition, and we'll filter the function results based on the vendor ID provided by the query. To do so, we'll select Vendor from our column list, select the equal comparison operator, and for compare to value type, we could use a literal value and select a valid option using the value drop-down menu, or we could use the database field value type and select a desired column name. For the purposes of this example, it would be best to use a cell reference. This way we can use the same function for each row in the query. Once we've selected cell reference as our value type, we can use the Cell Selector tool to select the first vendor ID listed in the query and click OK. Then clicking Next brings us to the final stage of the function wizard. Here we're provided options for the column layout, namely, should the columns display left to right or top to bottom, whether or not to include column captions, which would also insert the column name along with our function results, and the option to fill the formulas down should the function be inserted adjacent to an existing query or function. Since we are only returning one value in our example, we'll leave the layout set to left to right. We already have a column header, so we'll leave Include Column Captions off, and we do want this function to populate for the entire query, so we will leave the option to fill down formulas selected. Once we're done with our changes and we click Finish, we're then presented with the oldest AP invoice due date for each vendor. Notice that since we left the Fill Down Formulas option selected, our resulting function has automatically populated for every query result. Were we to refresh the query and a different result set was returned, our adjacent function would automatically update with the new results. This concludes this segment of the Liberty Reports training series on the DBMax function. Thanks for watching. We hope you found the information useful.